I'm Wendy Capewell, an experienced counsellor and psychotherapist. I work with so many people who feel that they're the only ones struggling with the issues that they share with me. Possibly, like many of you, they feel so alone. And so the aim of this podcast is to talk to guests who have their own stories to share, their experience of the struggles that they've been through, or maybe they're continuing to live with, offering their insights as well as their inspiring journey. But today's going to be a little bit different because I'm offering my reflections and thoughts that you might like to think about for the coming year. As we start the new year of 2020, I thought I'd offer you some of my reflections. I wonder how many of you have made New Year's resolutions. Those promises to yourself that you'll stop smoking, give up alcohol, go on that diet, eat more healthily, exercise more, or maybe there are other resolutions that you've made for yourself. And how often you set those goals and then within a few days or a few weeks or a few months, you look back and discover you haven't achieved that goal that you set yourself in the first place. So I wonder, is it lack of motivation? Or have you set the goals too high? Perhaps even you slipped. You had a sneaky cigarette. You've had that glass of wine or gin tea or beer. You missed going to the gym. Maybe one day, 1 week, or whatever the time you set yourself. And then the time drifts along, and then at that same point, you decide, oh, I can't be bothered. What's the point? I'm only going to fail. Nothing's going to change. And anyway, it's easy to take the least line of resistance because as humans, that's what we tend to do. So what if you set yourself more realistic challenges and goals? What if you are not so hard on yourself, seeking that perfection? And anyway, what is perfection? Is it something you set yourself, or are they other people's expectations? I'd like to ask you to think about those things as we move into the new year. I don't think there's any right or wrong. It's just, what do you think? Because I think too often we set ourselves unrealistic expectations. Then we beat ourselves up when we don't achieve them. What I've noticed in the world around us, especially on social media, is that we see people in the public eye referred to as celebrities. And what is a celebrity anyway? One definition I found was having fame, renown, or distinction, who is widely known and of popular interest. I think I might question some of those. Yeah, I wonder whether wearing a dress made of meat really makes you a celebrity. I know Lady Gaga is an amazing singer, but that meat dress, really? Now, I'm not necessarily talking about that meat dress because I don't think really any of us would follow that. But I have noticed that what happens is that these people in the public eye are followed because of the way they look, and then they're copied, having that so-called perfect figure, the so-called perfect hair, the so-called perfect relationship. I find some of this quite damaging, leading people into thinking that maybe some of that celebrity status will rub off on them. if they follow this so-called recipe for success. Even more worrying is that I notice young people especially trying to live up to that so-called perfection. And often they feel they are failing or falling short of that, leaving them feeling inadequate. I want to move on to social media now because that's where we see those people again in the public eye quite often, with those images cementing beliefs that we pick up on, that we aren't perfect. Because after all, if they achieve popularity and celebrity status, then surely it may rub onto us if we look like that. Or even if we don't get that celebrity status, we'll be recognised within our peer group, within our tribe, within our friendship groups as being perfection. So, how do you measure perfection, acceptance, popularity? Almost certainly, some young people believe they gain that acceptance through the number of likes they attract on social media, at the same time measuring themselves against their friends. This can have a profound effect on the way they feel about themselves when their likes get reduced or their friends receive more likes. And I'm really concerned because I'm noticing more and more people are dissatisfied in the way they look, especially these young people. And I'm noticing more and more younger people are seeking Botox, implants, body enhancements, or they're working out excessively in an attempt to improve the way they feel they should look. One of my favourite mantras for anybody who knows me is that comparison is the thief of joy. And here, I mean comparison with other people, whether it's their achievements, their looks, their lives, their relationships. It's so futile because each of us is an individual, totally unique. And so trying to compare yourself to somebody else really isn't realistic, is it? I saw a wonderful cartoon the other day which illustrated this so well. And this image was depicted several wild animals, including an elephant, a snake, a buffalo, a crocodile, an ostrich, a squirrel, and a cheetah. And the caption beneath it said, I want you all to climb up to this tree. Well, we know that not all animals can climb trees. So why would he expect humans, even though I know fundamentally we're the same species, why would we expect us all to achieve the same thing in the same way? After all, we come in different shapes and sizes, from different backgrounds, with different life experiences, and with different abilities. We aren't clones. We aren't robots. So you see, we can't achieve perfection because there's no such thing. And yet we're persuaded, encouraged, cajoled to believe that we can achieve perfection and we should aim for it. Not only in the way we look either, but in every part of our lives. Whether it's that persuasion to or expectation to have a perfect Christmas, the perfect holiday, the perfect event, the perfect day out, the perfect relationship, the perfect job, the perfect children, And then what about moving on to our homes? Marketeers, they have become so adept at selling their products. They persuade us that our kitchen is an embarrassment, that we really need to upgrade it. And after all, there's an offer on. So what? And you can spread the cost. And you're going to feel so much better. And everybody will think you're wonderful. And what if you have that new badge? You know, you're going to sleep so much better. And then we must have that new latest version of our mobile phone. The fastest broadband. Are we going to be so much happier if we have all of these trappings? Those marketeers, they really are adept at trapping into our reward system, which resides in our brain, by the way. So when you're tempted by the adverts that the latest phone will be so much better, accompanied by glossy images of the sparkling product and all the functions that it can carry out, happy, smiling people, yeah, you get the sense you're missing out, and that if you just had that new phone, you would be happy. So you order it. Oh, you get a sense of excitement, anticipation of receiving that new phone. And when it arrives, you can't wait to unpack it in its glossy packaging. You can't wait to get it working. You feel that sense of enjoyment already. Anticipation is building. And for a few moments, a few hours, a few days, a few weeks even, you can feel good. It can lift you. It can make you feel good. But the problem is you're likely to discover it doesn't live up to all its promises. After all, it's a phone. I know we're promised that the latest camera is so much better, etc., etc. But it's a phone, isn't it? Interesting, that one, isn't it? Before you know it, there's a newer version on the market too. And so you seek something else in the hope that it will satisfy you, to bring you that happiness and satisfaction that you crave of that perfect life. If you don't know of the experiment, I would ask you to check out Pavlov's dog. It explains how the brain and especially the reward system works. It's quite a fascinating and well-known experiment. The problem is that when we rely on material things to satisfy our needs and our happiness, we're likely to be disappointed. And too often it can become an addiction for some people. And it's not just drugs that people become addicted to. But just as those people who are addicted to drugs such as heroin, to give them that satisfaction, that kick, that high, whatever it is, they're constantly waiting for the next hit because that hit and that feeling of elation or whatever they get from it doesn't last very long. Other addictions act in the same way, whether it is retail therapy, porn, gambling, work, alcohol, body enhancements are some of them. That list goes on. People seeking that satisfaction or trying to get away from the things they don't want to face, and therefore they're distracting themselves from real life, living almost a fantasy world. They find it hard to enjoy the moment, living in the here and now, and those addictions and distractions are there instead, but they're not the answer. Sorry to tell you that, but it's a fact. I see too often people struggling because of that. And even when they're encouraged to remove that addiction, stop smoking, stop gambling, it leaves a void that they don't know how to fill any other way. And therefore, they'll look for another thing to replace it with, and it's not always the healthiest either. And these addictions can lead to depression, anxiety, fear of failure, lack of worth and self-esteem, further addictions, as I said, and sometimes loneliness, isolation, and wondering what people have to live for. Be very sad. So now I'm going to move on to relationships. And perhaps I'm going to burst your bubble and say there is no such thing as a perfect relationship. That one person who is going to be Mr. or Mrs. Right or Ms. There is no such thing as a perfect partner. And the reason being is that we're all flawed. Each and every one of us has some imperfection or another. Whether it was due to childhood events, the way we were parented, ill health, rejection, abandonment, bullying, abuse, a serious accident, death of someone close to us. That list goes on, it's endless. And add on to that the experiences that we've had in adult life and previous relationships. The result of all of this is that we each bring those scars into our adult life. They leave us feeling anxious, scared of being hurt or rejected, being vulnerable. Those past scars that we carry can trigger us at times, meaning we don't always respond in the best way either to our current partner. We ladle all of that rubbish onto them. We project it onto them. And sometimes it can be very hard to take ownership of our own feelings and not expect that they're going to treat us in that way as well. Or those past hurts are really not theirs, they're ours, and we need to deal with them. You see, the problem is that we're fed that belief that we can have that perfect relationship. And in fact, we deserve it. At that point, I should add, we shouldn't stay in abusive or toxic relationships. If that is what's happening to you, then I would seriously question it and remove yourself if you can. Our inner child craves that perfect, happy, ever after relationship. After all, Cinderella had a miserable childhood, bullied by her stepsisters and stepmother, unsupported by her father, treated like a slave in the family home. Until one day her fairy godmother arrived and made everything okay. She met her prince and he whisked her away and they lived happily ever after. Now that's the problem, because the happy ever after is left to our imagination. And of course, when we think about that, if they're going to be romantic fantasies, perfect, because she deserves it. She's found someone who's going to take her away from all of that. But they are childhood fantasies, not real life. Too often, couples come to me for help and support because they feel let down by their partner. They want their partners to be more like them or the way they want them to be, expect them to be, to have the same attitudes, personalities, and behaviours. They want the perfect partner. They want a rock, a lover, sometimes their provider, an amazing parent for their children, handyman, home decorator, car mechanic, amazing cook, and a soulmate. As well as sharing all of their leisure time and enjoying everything of the same way, the same hobbies and same outlooks. Well, that's not reality. And not only that, they expect their partner to be able to read their minds and understand their unspoken needs and wants and respond to them in the way that they want. They really are tall orders, and those realistic expectations can lead to disappointment, resentment, constant arguments, avoidance, and finally the breakdown of the relationship. So when I work with couples, I really do encourage them to kind of have a reality check. Because you can turn it around. It just is noticing what's realistic and what isn't. If you've entered into a relationship expecting your partner to change into what you want, then you're setting yourself up to fail. And to be honest, it's really unkind on the other person. I mean, what does it feel like for them if they don't live up to what you want them to be and they're falling short of that? Not only is it disrespectful, but it also will affect the way they feel about themselves. Not good enough. Too often, couples focus on the negatives, I've noticed too. The things they experience in their partner, those negative traits they may have, rather than celebrating the differences and acknowledging each other's strengths. Let me give you an example. You have one person in the relationship who is cautious, whether it's about spending money, taking risks, being adventurous, and they prefer to think things through before taking action. On the other hand, their partner may be impetuous, acting first and thinking later. Each of those traits can complement each other if only each were open to acknowledging the other and listening to each other's point of view. The impetuous one can encourage the cautious one to become more adventurous. At the same time, the more cautious one can encourage the impetuous one to take more measured risks. You notice I use the word encouraged. Instead, what can happen is that they are bullied, dismissed, nagged, and the results are, of course, what you would expect, disharmony. So it is understanding each other and celebrating those differences and really noticing that and working and as I say, encouraging each other to maybe work slightly differently or just be slightly different, but also appreciating what the other person offers. You see, relationships aren't about changing the other person into what you want them to be. I mean, that's completely disrespectful, isn't it? I'm in a relationship with you, but I don't like the way you are. I don't like the way you look. I don't like the way you behave. Well, why pick that person? You pick them because I'm guessing, that you liked them, you're attracted to them, and therefore you have to accept them for the way they are. But it is about encouraging and supporting each other to become the best version of themselves. Yeah, of themselves, not what you want them to be, of what their dreams, aspirations, or maybe things that they would like to work on. Perhaps they are a little bit anxious, or perhaps they lack confidence, or perhaps they want to carry out some studies or change a job or something. It's about encouraging rather than being annoyed at them and trying to make them into something they don't want to be. It's about having each other's backs. No, it's not going to be a fairy tale. And there's going to be lots of bumps along the way. And there are times when you probably won't even like each other. But the reality is life is not a fairy tale. So I'd like to end by saying that whilst we look forward to things being better in the coming year, we can't control all of it. Too many things are out of our control. And let's face it, shit happens. And whilst that can be really tough and really distressing, whether it's sickness, losing a job, someone close to you dying, or natural disasters, all we can do is learn to cope with them in the best way we can. Whether it's learning to become more resilient or finding coping mechanisms. That doesn't mean that we can't have our dreams, our goals, our aspirations. But it does mean there is a real importance here for living for today, enjoying the moment, finding something good to actually focus on during the day. Because that's all we've got right now. Every second that passes is history. It's gone. We can't do anything about it. We can't change it. We can't get it back. All we've got are the memories, whether they were good, bad, or indifferent. But they've gone. That's it. You can't go back and edit it. And neither can we predict the future. We can plan, but we have to accept that those plans can't be set in concrete because things can change. As I think we've all learned during this pandemic, you can plan to go on holiday, you can plan big events, but that can change because of circumstances. All I'd say is that we just think about those things and just notice that the importance of the here and now. Because I really believe it's important to make the best of the present. You see, it's called the present. And for me, every day is a gift. One that so many of us are denied. So I'm going to end now and ask you to make the most of each moment. Live your life without regrets. Like I say, you can't change it. And wishing you a very happy new year, whatever it brings you. Take care. I hope you found this episode interesting as well as helpful. If you'd like to learn more about me, then go to my website, wendycapewell.co.uk. And there you can also book a call and find out how you can work with me. In the meantime, take care of yourself. Until next time, bye.